Before we head back into court, I want to bring in our guest, National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar. All right, Michael, 3 days on the stand for Ali Abulaban, and now he's finished his cross-examination. What do you think?
I think he has a better chance at standing at Niagara Falls and throwing the water back than getting any type of an acquittal or reduction. He's toast. If I was a law school exam professor and I just got started my tenure and I gave a crim law exam and those are the fact patterns I gave, I'd be fired for incompetence because of how easy of a fact pattern this is. He's getting convicted normally. You know my opinion on these, Judge Ashley, these exotic defenses, heat of passion. If we were 75 years ago and you caught your wife on the couch with another man and you murdered her, maybe you could have a chance. It's just not going to happen.
So I agree with you, and I did find that I was not at all sympathetic, and nor did I believe his defense. But having said that, could it be that there's at least one juror that listened to pieces of his direct and his cross about, for instance, I'm not, not trying to shift the blame, and I snapped, and I didn't realize what I was doing, and what's going on, and out of body. Could that sway one juror theoretically?
Not in California. I think if this was in a conservative state, if this was in, I don't know, Tennessee, Kentucky, Arkansas, he would have a chance at a hung jury, right? Because the jury in your case are always going to run something through their own filter of the way they live their lives, right? I always talk about this, and when I talk to young attorneys, I tell them, look, you have to argue differently depending on your jury pool, right? In California, they have a completely different analysis when somebody, murders somebody else because they are, even if it was an affair and it wasn't an affair, right? I don't think he has more than a 1% chance at swaying any juror with that. But I do agree with you. Theoretically speaking, there you could color a heat of passion defense with the snapping and cutting it against his own interest with the way he's saying, I snapped. I didn't mean, I don't want to put this on anybody else, but I just don't think it's realistic.
Yeah, I agree with you. And one of his lines was, "I'm not a totally abusive husband." Ooh, that's not going to help your case. All right, stand by, Michael. Yeah. The state finished its case, its cross rather, and now the defense gets another redirect, another chance to clean up any of the cross. Let's go back into court. We'll get you back into the courtroom in just a moment. But first, I want to bring in National Trial Attorney Michael Jaafar. Michael, talk a little bit about, from your perspective, what is the whole point of redirect?
Well, the whole point of the redirect in this specific case is for this attorney specifically to bring back into light. First of all, her client is a very difficult client to have on the stand. And as my mentor told me, you hold your breath anytime your client opens their mouth to talk. You just hold your breath as an attorney. And so I'm sure she's holding her breath a lot. In her specific purpose for the redirect is to bring down the issue of the fact that she was not a victim of domestic violence. She could have left at any time, and because she wants to set up the heat of passion defense later, right? She wants to set it up by saying, look, he was not just abusing her that ended in a murder, right? They just had a contentious relationship, and she could have left at any time, but she chose not to left. And so that's really the purpose of her redirect here, is just to show that they were together, not because he trapped her or he moved her from Virginia to San Diego and she was stuck there. They were there because she wanted to be with him, right? That's why they were still, somewhat in a relationship, and that's when she still lived in the apartment. It was because she wanted to live in the apartment, not because she felt she needed to live in the apartment. And so that's, in my opinion, what she's trying to establish with this redirect.
I agree with you, but he says too much. He shoots himself in the foot because he was talking about, he was confused about, there were all the talking of divorce and TROs. A TRO is a temporary restraining order. And so clearly, if she's talking about TROs, she must feel like there's domestic violence, which is exactly what he's trying to say there's not.
Yes, that's exactly what he's trying to do, and he needs to do that, because to set up the heat of passion defense, they have to meet so in California, they have the same elements as everybody else. They have the 4 elements to meet a heat of passion defense, but the biggest one, the one that has the biggest pot marks on it in this case, is the lack of a cooling off period, right? There's been a big cooling off period. They have to prove, the defense would have to prove that he couldn't cool off. yes, he heard them laughing, and then he drove to the apartment and he shot them both. But he didn't have enough time to cool off. They're going to have to convince the jury that that's not enough time to cool off. He was still in the heat of passion. And so that's why they're trying to dissuade the defenses, to dissuade the whole, domestic violence, and he was an abusive person, because it's not that he killed her because he's abusive. He killed her because he was enraged in a heat of passion. He was provoked, and he did not have enough time to cool off. A reasonable person would not have cooled off. A reasonable person in the same situation would have driven to the apartment and killed her. And that's what they have to prove, and they're going to have a difficult time doing it.
All right, let's see what else they're able to establish on redirect.